Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up. Our first guest today is Dr. Kavitha-Chinnaiyan, and she's here to share with us her new book, The Heart of Wellness. Now, Dr. Kavitha is a cardiologist at Beaumont Health Systems and associate professor of medicine at Oakland University William Beaumont School of Medicine. She was featured as one of the best doctors of America and has served on several national and international committees. Dr. Kavitha has been a spokesperson for the American Heart Association and has served as co-chair for the Go Red for Women event sponsored by the AHA. She has also won several awards and grants for research in cardiology, has awarded the Seeker of Truth Award for her research endeavors, and appeared often on local and national radio and television. So let's welcome to the show Dr. Kavitha.
Oh, thank you, Marianne. Thank you for having me.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. And so, gosh, what a profound book, The Heart of Wellness. How long did it take you to develop the information for this book?
Well, The Heart of Wellness is actually a book that is based on a program I had been conducting called Heal Your Heart, Free Your Soul. And that program has been ongoing for about 7 years. So it's been a long-term project.
Yeah. So, well, I know that you had become interested on the path of kind of like mastering the Eastern and Western medicine traditions that also, was the basis for your book. How did you start on that journey?
I think mastering is a very strong word because I don't think we ever master, medicine because it's so complex and so voluminous. But I trained in Western medicine, went to an allopathic medical school, and started practicing in Western medicine, which is really also my current practice. But along the way, I kind of began to question some of the fundamental issues about health and wellness, and found that there were no good answers in modern medicine, in allopathic medicine, particularly in terms of why would you have heartburn if you are a type A personality? Right? Mm-hmm. And if you are constantly stressed, why would you have certain issues like irritable bowel syndrome, or have a heart attack when you're angry, or these kinds of very deep connections with the mind and with the spirit that there were no good explanations in modern medicine. So I started looking elsewhere, and particularly because of my own interest in yoga, Ayurveda made a lot of sense to me to pursue because it spoke the language of yoga, and I found it to be extremely delightful and very, very engaging and interesting for me in being able to explain some of the things that I was not finding explanations for. So that's how I became very interested in that.
Well, I'm always fascinated by the journeys that take people to really what their passion is about. And you can definitely see within your book, your passion just shines throughout that. And so I know you talk about Bliss RX. So what is that?
Yeah, so when we talk about bliss, first of all, the definition of health is very different from those two aspects, the aspect of modern medicine versus the viewpoint of Ayurveda. So in modern medicine, health would be defined, for instance, by the World Health Organization as not just a mere absence of disease, but also wellness and in terms of the body and mind. So the World Health Organization actually borrowed this from Ayurveda because in the past, health used to be defined as absence of disease. It's very interesting that Ayurveda does not consider mere absence of disease as health. It goes one step further and talks about digestion, and digestion doesn't necessarily only refer to digestion in the gut, but how we digest our lives. And finally, it says health is defined. Health is the condition in which the body, the mind, and the senses are filled with bliss. So this is not a word that you would see anywhere in allopathic medicine, bliss. Yeah. It's like, what does that even mean? So, and unfortunately, the word bliss is really overused in our modern culture with things like follow your bliss or whatever, which is really not what I'm discussing in the book. Here, bliss actually refers to the unlimited and unending, eternal joy of discovering of who we really are. So it's that joy of self-discovery rather than following your passion and follow your bliss, which is a very different paradigm in modern culture. So that's not the bliss we're talking about. So the Bliss RX in the book actually refers to specific steps to take to bring the body and the mind into a balanced state where it becomes easier and easier and increasingly easier to discover our own true identity.
What are some ways that we can practice that on a daily basis?
Well, the fundamental building block of my program, as well as the Bliss RX, is meditation. And so, meditation is a practice that I can't really recommend enough because what it is a good technique, and there are hundreds of techniques, so you have to be careful about what technique you choose. The good technique, the ideal meditation technique, is one that takes you out of your mind and gives you eventually the ability to witness your own self in action as you're thinking, as you're feeling, to be able to stand apart from it, and that's called witnessing. And a good meditation practice cultivates that inner silence and the loss of those constant voices, which are always speaking in our heads. Because until that inner silence is established, you can't really proceed on this path of finding bliss.
Yeah. Yeah, because it really is a journey. It's not something that happens overnight, I would assume.
Yeah, it isn't. And I mentioned in the book, this is not like one of those 21-day programs or 28-day programs, and you're not going to be able to lose weight or or have any of these tangible effects in a short amount of time, because that's not the goal of this program.
Yeah, it has a different. Well, and that kind of leads me to my next question, because we kind of talk a lot, about what some of these goals are. Now, is self-discovery part of this goal, and if so, is that something that can be measured?
No, it cannot be measured, and that's the other issue. Everything in science rests on objective measurements, right? And there are a lot of objective measurements in Ayurveda that we can turn to, such as measuring blood pressure. Your blood pressure will go down when you meditate, and your heart rate will go down. There will be decreased markers of inflammation and increased telomere length and aging and slowing down of aging and all that. Those are all all objective measures. But when it comes to bliss and the experience, the constant experience of unshakable peace and joy, it's completely subjective. There is no measure for it. We can do functional brain MRIs and so on that show certain patterns in, for instance, the monks who have a long meditation practice and so on. But still, that doesn't really equate with what they are experiencing, right? Because it's completely subjective.
I know some of them seem to levitate. Well, someone like me meditating is like, am I there yet?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I'm talking. I'm not supposed to be talking.
Yeah, so it's a completely subjective thing, which is very tricky in terms of research, in the mind-body arena, because everybody is saying, well, show me the evidence. And my point is there is none. I can't show you because you are it.
That's so very well said, and I'm so glad that you put it that way, because a lot of times people look at it and they're looking, because we're in such a society where things come so quickly, and a lot of times people expect that instant
gratification.
Yes. Kind of like, where's all my stuff,
Yeah. And that's the thing in my programs, and this is what people say, they think, a lot of people think that, okay, just because they started meditating yesterday, today their life should be somehow different. And it doesn't work like that, because it takes a lot of undoing of things that we have been doing for decades. And it takes about as long to undo as it did to do it, Yeah. And that kind of patience is something that we need to cultivate along the way as well, if we really are interested in that kind of health where the senses are permeated with bliss.
Yeah, and then patience is such a big deal, in making changes, and and I would be remiss if we didn't start talking about taking care of our bodies as well, because you're a cardiologist, you're such a profound doctor, and I do want to chat with you a little bit. It's like, does our body care? Does it care about the changes that we make, or is it just kind of not even involved in that?
That's such a good question, because I think I write about that in the book, where I say your body doesn't care. And so what I mean by that is, I spend a lot of time counseling patients about lifestyle. And this is what I do on a daily basis, because preventive cardiology is one of my specialties. So I counsel people about lifestyle, what to eat, what not to eat, and how to live your life, basically. And a lot of patients will come back to me and say, well, Dr. Chinnaiyan, I quit this, and this, but you know what? I'm not going to quit this. I can't, it's not something I'm going to do. And I tell them, well, it doesn't really matter to me. Why don't you talk to your body? Tell your body what you are willing to do and what you're not willing to do, and let's see if it has the ability to care. Your body doesn't really have the ability to think, oh, wait, she's trying, or he's trying, so let me not start manifesting disease right now. It doesn't have the ability to do that. It's simply reacting to whatever we do to it.
Yeah.
And so all our dramas about, I can quit this, I can't quit that, I'm habituated like this, my parents were like this, and so on and so forth, it really makes no difference to the body. It's simply seeing what is being put in, and it's, churning out the hormones and the nerve pathways, and that's it, and metabolic pathways, and creating health or disease, whatever it is that we do. So it has no ability to analyze and say, let me give her a break. She's trying. Or, poor thing, he's been trying to quit smoking for 15 years. Let me not clog up the arteries. It doesn't have the ability to think that, you know? So it has, and it doesn't have the ability to care.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they had such good intentions not to eat a bag of chips, you know?
Exactly. So, you know, if you have heart failure and you eat a bag of chips, you are going to go into heart failure and you're going to be back in the hospital. So whether or not you had the intention of eating that or not makes no difference to the body.
Yeah.
You know, or to the kidneys or to the heart.
Oh, it's got its own, it just does its thing. Well, and so with knowing that, when we talk about the definition of health, how does that relate to the Bliss model?
So the Bliss model really that I'm proposing in the book is a bit of a paradigm shift in saying, well, you know, there are lots of diseases that are incurable. You know, and I'm a cardiologist, so I can tell you that most heart diseases are incurable. 99% of heart diseases are incurable. Incurable as in there is no cure. We can manage it, but that's it. You know, there is no cure. And so what are we going to do about that? You know, one is, yes, we can prevent it, but there are lots of factors that are beyond our control, you know, when it comes to prevention. So you can do everything you can to prevent disease and still get it. So can we have a chronic incurable disease or illness, and can we still be free of suffering? You know, that's the question. Or is it that disease and suffering go hand in hand? So if you have disease, does it mean that you are damned into suffering and feeling miserable for the rest of your life? Or is it possible to find that bliss I was talking about, despite the condition of the body? And it is possible.
Do you know, Dr. Kavitha, and we're going to, I'll make a note here for the producer, your sound's going out. So, sorry, we don't want to lose you because so why don't we try, why don't I have you just talk up for a little bit?
Sure.
There, I got a little bit louder, so why don't you go ahead and talk for a little bit, we'll see how it sounds.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Oh, yes, much better.
Okay,
perfect.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I'll start with another question, and then our producer will make us look good, and we'll go from there. So we got the blue.
Sure.
Oh, we want to do you justice. My goodness, you know. Oh, here we go. Because we will talk about hearts. So, Dr. Kavitha, what are some of the risk factors that turn into heart disease?
There are many known risk factors that we have discovered through, through research studies in the last 50 years or so. So, for instance, diabetes is such a big risk factor for heart disease that if you're a diabetic, we just assume that you have heart disease. It's such a big risk factor. And similarly, high blood pressure, smoking, and high cholesterol, and any other kinds of inflammatory disorders, obesity, and so on. And all of these are very well-known risk factors for heart disease. And so, when you have the right setup for heart disease with all these risk factors and inflammation of the arteries, the risk factors turn into or become the inciting factors for heart disease.
I find that so fascinating because there's, I know it's a little bit different from men to women as well.
Yes, in women, actually, this is really an ongoing discovery in terms of heart disease in women because there are lots of things we don't really understand in women. And that's because the research isn't there. And we have traditionally applied the model from men to women, and only in the last 10 or 15 years we have discovered that that isn't the right thing to do, that perhaps we should be doing something different in women. I mean, right? We're not little. We're not little men. We have different physiology and different biology. So a lot of good work is going on to discover the unique risk factors and issues of heart disease in women.
Well, I'm so glad that that's happening, because it seems like we're like a little bit behind the curve, with that one.
A lot behind the curve. Not just
yeah, it's so much, but thank goodness that there's studies going on. And I know in your book you talk about lifestyle habits that cause, I think you have 4 listed there, that are cause most of the illness and chronic disease. And I just wanted to see if you would share a couple of those with us.
Yeah, so, the thing is, most people tend to think that the biggest risk factor for heart disease is genetics. My father had heart disease, my mother had heart disease, so I must have it. Well, it turns out that 95 to 97% of heart disease is actually lifestyle. So we can stop blaming our parents. It really has very little to do with genes. And only in certain populations do we consider a genetic model because, number one, there isn't a single gene identified in heart disease. There are multiple genes involved, and it's an ongoing, debate and puzzle for physician scientists to find those genetic markers, and we haven't found a single, there isn't one particular gene that causes heart disease. There are some rare instances, but most people, that's not what happens. It's lifestyle. So when people talk about heart disease in their parents, what I ask them to do is to think about what else we inherit from our parents. We don't just inherit their genes, right? We also inherit their habits, what they ate, how they lived their life, how they responded to life, whether or not they exercised, whether or not they smoked, whether or not they had a lot of alcohol. We pick up all these factors from our parents, right? So how can we blame genes when there is no separation between the genes and between lifestyle factors? And it also happens that studies in the last decade or so in epigenetics have shown us that lifestyle influences genes. So it isn't, genes are not static. It's not like, okay, they're just going to do one thing. They're constantly morphing. Genes are genetic expression and genetic, information is constantly changing based on our habits. So we may have a risky gene, but if we have the right lifestyle, we can prevent that from expressing. So lifestyle is such a big factor for all chronic illnesses that, there is no doubt that it's the most important factor rather than genetics.
It's so important to know that and to be involved in that, because it plays such a huge part in our overall well-being and wellness, which is, what your book really, I think, kind of dives into, so people can have a better understanding of just suffering altogether.
Absolutely. So, and this should come as a very freeing information, that, wait, I'm not doomed, because I have, parents with heart disease or any other kind of disease. It's in my hands. And what I do, it can influence my genes. So this should be very empowering, actually.
Yeah, I would think so. And so when we talk about bliss as well, how does that play a part in all of this, too?
Well, the thing is, so this issue of bliss is actually very elusive. As I said, it isn't something that can be even understood by the mind because it lies beyond the mind. It is the fundamental shift in identity of who we think we are. So when we identify with the mind and body and we say, this is who I am with my story and my past and my body and my family history and so on, then the body and the body becomes the central issue. And, we treat the body, we give medication for the body, and so on and so forth. And that just perpetuates that, identification with the body, because the body is going to die. It's going to decay. It's going to die. But when we really understand in an experiential way that this body is not who I am, this mind is not who I am. So who am I then? And so when we go back, it's like a regression, keep going back to see, well, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not that. So who am I? And so we reach a point where that there is an absolute shift in identity from the being identified with the body-mind to becoming identified with bliss. So it's not like I have bliss, I am bliss. So that is who I am. That is my true identity. So when that happens, what I've described in the book is like an outside-in approach. So you work on the body, you work on the mind, and, we keep going back. And so the effect of that is what comes through. So you've gone back in a regressive way, and once that self-discovery happens, it starts permeating our mind, our body, the world, and how we see it. So our whole perception shifts. How we view things shifts, and everything changes. So it's literally that bliss starts percolating within ourselves, and has its own cellular effects and so on, and that doesn't mean that, we will be miraculously cured or somehow the disease goes away. There are some instances where that does happen, but that's not why we do this. We take on this journey of self-discovery purely for its own sake, and see what happens.
And it is such a personal journey, because as we go along the path, whether it's diving into the Bliss RX model or meditation or whatever the case is, when we really get into that, it keeps unfolding as we continue to travel throughout that. Something else comes up, and it's like, oh, look at this.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's so beautifully said, because it's a never-ending unfolding. It never ends. The journey never ends. There's continuous clarification of perception. There's continuous refining of experience, and so it's like whereas when we are identified with the body and mind as who we are concerned with all kinds of mundane things. It's like, I need this, he said this, she said that, I have that story and this story, and it's all fine. But it's not that those stories suddenly magically disappear with the process of discovery, but our relationship with those changes. Because we live in a space of surrender and non-resistance, and seeing that we are not our stories. But it's a very gentle, loving, accepting kind of a space to operate from. And it's a very different vantage point. One is very self-centered. I need this to be happy. I need that. Constantly chasing something. And then there is this where you're always complete. And everything that's arising in all our own stories and our mental patterns and our bodily pain and the disease and so on, they become very acceptable and welcomed into our loving space.
Yes. I mean, it's such a great place to be in, and even though, they never said it would be easy, but as we continue through the journey, it's so worth it.
Yes. Yes, and that's the thing is, it is, and it's not a journey that everybody's prepared to take, and that's okay, Whatever we can do, each of us is going to be, called to the journey in our own way, in our own time, and that's perfectly all right. That's part of the divine plan. So it's not that everybody should be interested in self-discovery, but the book is an invitation to see. Can you see that there might be something more? Can that seed be planted? And it's okay. If the seed takes effect and it starts flowering decades from now, that's still fine, but the seed has been planted.
I love how you have it interwoven with medicine. So, it talks about different things that we should be made aware of, and it also touches on that spirituality side to kind of just look at it and dive into it deeper. And so, I'm going to end our conversation here with a wallop of a question. So, in your viewpoint, can suffering be alleviated?
Absolutely. It's optional. Suffering is optional. And we can't see that until we take on this journey.
Yeah. Well, that is a perfect way to end. And so, Dr. Kavitha, where can people connect with you and learn more about your book? Because, gosh, it just came out, and what a great way to start the new year is with the Heart of Wellness. So where can people connect with you and learn more about all the great stuff you're doing?
So a great place is my website. It's kavithamd.com, KAVITHAMD.com. And I will be conducting an online course based on the book in the second half of 2018. And so that's something to be made aware of. And, there'll be lots of events and so on. But all that will be on my website.
Oh, perfect. Well, we're going to have your website listed here so people can click on it as well. And I highly suggest everyone become part of your community. I've signed up. I think you've got some great information that needs further investigating.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Dr. Kavitha, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, thank you. It was such a joy and pleasure to talk with you.
Oh, thank you, and you too. We are going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Do you know that you can become a genius at any age? Do you know that you can change your life and create a brilliant life for yourself? Hi, I am Olympia LaPointe, an award-winning rocket scientist who you more than likely have seen on TED Talks, Impact Theory, and PBS. Check out my latest book, Answers Unleashed, The Science of Unleashing Your Brain's Power. Simply go to AnswersUnleashed.com books and check it out for yourself. You'll find the tools to help you create the life you've always wanted.
The highly acclaimed and newly released book, The Hand Part 2 by Lynn Van Praag Grattan, describes the journey between a psychic medium and a family who lost a son. Messages from Beyond Eternity's Gate is of love and healing. For more information, visit www.linvanprague-grattan.com. That's www.linvanprague-grattan.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. I am so delighted to be introducing our next guest, Grace-Allison. So Grace is here today to talk to us about how you can create the life you've always wanted. And she's here to share with us her new book, Do You Have a Dream? Workbook. Now, Grace is a modern Christian mystic and an award-winning self-help and motivational author who has helped thousands of people find their spiritual wisdom to solve their everyday challenges. So let's welcome to the show, Grace.
Well, thank you, Marianne. I appreciate being here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here. And, you know, what a great way to start off the new year by having a dream workbook to get started on.
Absolutely. Whenever the new year begins, people think of all the things they want to do, include starting with losing weight or perhaps making new goals. And there's always a resistance inside. Oh, my gosh, did I take on too much? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it could feel like, kind of getting to overwhelm because we get this list of things we should do. But is it really things that feed our soul?
Exactly. And my book has some specific keys in it to not just give you an idea to dream, but how to receive the dreams. Because often when we put down a goal or we put down something that we want to achieve, it is a goal, and we've never gone there before. So there's all kinds of things in the way that get in the way of receiving it. And with my book and all of the keys in the book, there are ways to unlock your blocks so that you actually receive the dream, receive what you're actually trying to have in your life, whether it's more money, a better career, relationships, and it even could be losing weight. It's a matter of, are you really ready for that intention and that ability to receive?
Yeah, so, before we get too far into this discussion, I'd love to learn how you became a modern Christian mystic.
Well, this has been 40 years in the making for me. Being a mystic is not about reading astrology cards or tarot, but it's really going into the spiritual heart. And that started for me about in 1973. When I met a very special person, John Roger, in a meeting. And that night when I was going to sleep, I had this beautiful feeling of God's love flooding my entire beingness. And it set me on a journey of going into my heart, into the loving of my spiritual heart, and learning how to heal the past of pain and suffering so that I could live a more heartfelt, spiritual, loving life. And it's all about healing and forgiveness and moving forward. And it's been 40 years of doing this. I mean, I've had incredible experiences of God's light and love and healing through my life, especially when I turned 40. And I had cervical cancer, and I'm laying there in bed and calling in the light. And that night, I had this beautiful healing of love. I was lifted up into my soul, and a beautiful light came into me and flooded my entire beingness with this love. And the next day, the surgeons went in there, and there was nothing there. So I totally dedicated my life to the mystical travelers, the light of the Christ, and really held the focus of this loving. And I'm a light bearer and sharing this information with people so they too can turn inside. I mean, we're in a time right now where there are a lot of people struggling on many different levels. And I'm a light bearer holding this information and energy and trying to help people go back inside where we really do need to find who we are.
Mm-hmm. And just to be able to move beyond these things that come up in our lives that can be, some of them are traumatic, some of them are challenges, but to be able to meet them and just walk through that.
And it's not easy to say that and do that every day. We are here on the planet, I think, to learn lessons, and a lot of lessons come with difficulties. I mean, people having health issues, perhaps their house has been burned down. We had a lot of floods in the world lately. A lot of change. And with change brings challenges. And how we meet those challenges sometimes will define our lives, whether for the better or however we choose to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and just in how we move forward, and it makes a big difference, because there's always going to be challenges. It's how we, overcome those and the spirit that we keep as we do that.
Absolutely, yes.
So as you were on your journey over the last 40 years, and on this path of being a light bearer, how did this dream book come into being?
The dream book came out of my illness when I was in my 40s because I had to ask myself questions. If I were truly healthy and well, what would I be doing with my life? And this is when I learned about how intention really matters when you're going toward change. And when I started doing this process, my intuition and things started coming to me to help me make the changes I needed to make. So I started writing down questions, asking myself, am I safe? Am I worthy? For all the changes that I wanted to make so that I could be healthy and well again. Because the doctors weren't going to help me. Nobody was going to rescue me. And I think that's one thing in our culture today is we have rescue me. I don't want to do this myself. Well, I'm sorry. It all comes back to us. And that's how it got started for me is I decided to create positive intentions and work through the change of those intentions. And so A Dream is a Wish the Heart Makes was my first book that came out in 2000. And it really came out after I lost my job. And I asked God, what am I supposed to do? And he said, write your book. And I go, book? And it was about the last 10 years that I had experienced change in my life and the wellness programs that I was assisting other people with the same processes of mental, emotional, spiritual intention and change so that they could also flourish. We have to go inside and change who we are in our minds and our spirit in order for life to come to us in an easier, more loving, helpful way. Mm-hmm. And that's how the first book got started. And that was, I was unemployed for like 3 years. But I managed to make enough money and get the book published myself. And this was self-publishing before it was self-publishing in 2004. That's when the book came out. And it has really touched a lot of people and helped a lot of people along the way. So that's how the first book got started.
So who is this book intended to be for? Is it for everybody? Is there just a certain audience that you're looking to reach with this book?
It's really amazing how many people have been touched by it. I find that people who are looking for a better way to think and feel, sometimes they're not physically well. Other times they want a journal that they can use on a daily basis that will help spur them into a new moment. I have some ladies who read spiritual books at night, and this is one they keep by their bedside for when they go to sleep at night, and it helps them let go of the day. I've had some people use it I had one gentleman who was a coach, a professional coach, who read the book and helped him make his new goal for his career. And so there are elements of the book elements in the book for those kinds of changes. I also offer a workshop. I do a 4-hour workshop with this book. And I've found people from all kinds of levels. Some people who have cancer and find peace because they're about to pass over. There is just a wide range of people who are looking for inspiration today because of where we are on the planet. And it provides lots of different inspiration for very many people.
Well, and I know in your book you talk about the 5 keys that kind of move people through the entire book. Why don't you share that with our listeners?
Okay. The first important part of the key is, what is your dream? If you had something that perhaps was so unattainable, like when I was homeless, jobless, and penniless, I created my process of writing down what I wanted and the kind of job I wanted. But there was a huge dream I had, which was to be on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And I wrote that down as kind of a joke, but you know what? Within a year, I was in her audience. So I can tell you that writing down what it is that you want and having that intention is very, very important. And then there are what gets in the way of those dreams, which is the resistance, what I call just the resistance of energy, the blocks that hold you back. And in this process in the book, I ask you, so now you've written down your dream. Do you really feel safe with this dream? Maybe, are you worthy to have it? How about, are you permitted to have it? So there are a number of questions I ask so that you can then write down what the resistance is to having your dream. Because once we clear all the stuff that's in the way, you'll be surprised the magic that happens, that comes to you once you have cleared everything in the way. And then we align with the loving of the heart, which is making sure that it's for the highest good. This is not a manipulation of asking for what you want and then God being the bellhop in the sky giving it to you. But really you go into a forgiveness of all the stuff that you've held against yourself and just ask God, please, if it's for the highest good, I would really like to have and receive this dream. And sometimes I found, even though you've written down this dream, this isn't what really God wants for you. And something else comes up that could even be better. So that's why we do this for the highest good, because we allow the spirit of the loving of God to come forward and to bring forward what is for your highest good. And there is healing in this. There is creativity that just magically appears once you start letting go of what's in the way. And creativity it's like, oh boy, I want to do this, and boy, isn't this fun? Mm-hmm. And the process, I do have this one key in here, which is really, really important, that we do this, and it's easy, it's pleasurable, it's safe, and it's fun, with joy and enthusiasm. I mean, who wouldn't want to be involved in something that's easy, pleasurable, safe, and fun with joy and enthusiasm? And that's why these 5 keys are important, because it takes you through the steps easily, and you can do this every day for like 30 days, and you'll be surprised what happens, just the magic that happens after 30 days.
It just sounds like it's such a delightful journey to go through each of these steps, because it really does uncover quite a bit. And I'm sure when people get to that point when you're like, hey, I'm writing a dream for myself, when a lot of times people are caregivers for kids or, family members or what have you, it seems like dreaming for themselves is not permitted, or it's hard for them to kind of come up with that.
Absolutely. I started out that way. I raised 5 brothers and sisters and a crazy mother. I had no boundaries. And so it's important to find boundaries for yourself and priorities, and the book goes into doing how to do that. We have to take care of ourselves first, or we lose ourselves and we'll get very sick along the way. So it's real important for caregivers in particular to start taking care of themselves first and say, if I was worthy to have a dream, what would it be?
Do you ever get when people contacting you saying they kind of get stuck on that part?
Yes, and that's why I ask you to write down if you don't feel worthy, what's in the way of that? And so then it's just an automatic writing that you do to write down the resistance of being worthy. I'm not worthy because, and then just write it all out. This is all in our unconscious, all of these things we've been holding on to, the programming that we receive from what we should be doing as caregivers, as wives, as mothers, as those that we are out there supposedly taking care of all the time. So what is in the way of you actually being worthy? Write it down, get it out, because once you start getting it out, you'll find that you release and dump all this negativity that you no longer need. And you just keep writing and writing and writing until there's nothing else there. And once you've let that go, then we call in God's loving light and we say, Father, I forgive myself for holding these judgments against myself, and I bless this, and I place in this light the ability to receive worthiness for myself, that I may too receive your loving grace and be worthy to receive all good things in your name. And that kind of process, you do that every day until you actually start feeling the love in your heart and the worthiness coming in. And you'll see that you'll have more confidence in yourself and your abilities to interact with others. You won't be as sharp or angry, pushing people away, because you are now feeling as though you have a space of your own. And that space is heartfelt inside of you, and you're able to give more of yourself because you're more full in the cup that you have of your own love. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's interesting when people are starting to walk through their dreams and what it is that they want. I mean, they get to the third key, which is forgiveness. And I would think that that's also a place where people are like, how can you forgive the unforgivable sometimes, though,
Well, what is unforgivable? God said there's nothing that we cannot forgive. We're here to learn lessons on our planet here, and there's no one here on the planet that does not deserve his love. And whatever has happened, no matter what you've done, there's nothing that he won't forgive. And it takes small steps sometimes, and just saying, God, please give me the strength to forgive myself. Yeah. And that sometimes will start the process to where you then can say, I forgive myself for holding these judgments against myself. But he is there, his loving grace and the Christ light that is within everyone is so present and available. We just have to ask.
And that's what it kind of comes down to, is just asking for that help.
Yes. And it's every day. I mean, sometimes the challenge is, especially when people are sick or in a very difficult job situation. I had a job situation for 2 years with this very, very manipulative person who was attacking every day. And I was tested in my strength, tested in my courage. And by the end of the situation, it cleared. And I felt so much stronger inside of myself. But every day I was forgiving myself for holding judgments against myself that this person was going to destroy me. And she couldn't do it. And there were just things would happen to help keep her at bay. And at job situations, relationships, everything is here for a lesson. And if you kind of look at it that way, what lesson am I learning right now, and how can God help me in my loving so that I can make it through this in an easier way? I don't have to do this with anger. I don't have to act out. I don't have to be an againstness person. How can I put loving in this so that I can heal and perhaps lift the situation?
Yeah, and be able to turn things around. Because
Absolutely.
We want to be in a place, regardless what's going on around us, to be able to just respond, with just kind of loving kindness, or just staying neutral as much as possible and not react. And then having to have something else we need to work on forgiveness for.
Absolutely, and today we're in a change in our planet where there is so much againstness with terrorism, and it's caused a darkness on our planet. So we're in a challenging time right now to find the light inside of ourselves so that we can hold this and be there for one another right now. Every person has to stand in their peace. We all have to call on our own loving inside and help each other through these changes that are happening on the planet. It's really a test of how are we going to respond to our life right now. Will it be with fear or with love?
Yeah, which way we're going to go with that. Well, in your book, you touch on something that I would love to talk with you about, because it's, I think it's something a lot of times people have difficulty with, and it's the topic of boundaries. So it's like when we talk about boundaries, a lot of times if someone was brought up in a home where maybe the boundaries were crossed, or the parents weren't very effective at boundaries themselves because they never learned that. What are some of the traits that you talk about boundaries in regards to your book?
Boundaries are really important. We live in such a fast world today, and with different genders interacting and it's just, we don't have a sense of social values. So what I like to tell people is, if you were sitting on 10 acres of land right now, this is where you are. You are on a piece of land that you own, that is where your person is. And if you put your arms out and you kind of swing around, this is your personal space. And this is something that actually needs to be honored. Every person has their personal space that needs to be honored and cherished. And so I call this my personal boundary space. And when you call that forward to yourself, no one has the right to come there that's not invited. And you have a right to tell them, I'm sorry, but right now, this is not a good time for me to talk with you, or what you said to me really comes against my boundary, my personal space of loving. This is a place that is really honored in our own personal way. And unless we let people know in a way that supports you and them, they're not going to know how to treat you. So we have to ask people to treat us the way we want to be honored. And this is a place where this 10 acres of your land is yours. It's your personal space. This is your Garden of Eden. This is where you create. This is your space of everything that belongs to you in a spiritual way. And so people have to learn to honor that space, and only you can tell them how you want to be treated. This personal boundary is yours. No one else has the right to come to you and step into that space unless you allow it. So I'd let people know that you create, allow, and promote everything from this one small place in the universe, which is your 10 acres. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's such a great way to explain it, because I think a lot of times people get a little confused with boundaries and, how to start implementing them. And having that visualization of this is your 10 acres and, this is like the things that you're willing to accept or not accept on your property, and it's really talking about, yourself and what it is that you're, just expecting from the people around you. And if your neighbors move, it's okay,
Absolutely. And sometimes you do want them to move. Yeah. I'm sorry, but gee,
Well,
I'm not comfortable with you in my space right now.
Yeah, and when you have healthy boundaries, there is a shift that happens in people, places, and things, and it's okay.
It's another part of being worthy. When you create healthy boundaries, when you let people know, hey, what you said to me right now, I'm sorry, but I can't accept that. Especially when you're around toxic people that are constantly negative or saying things that are against everything in the world, whether it be politics or religion or what's going on the planet right now. I find that knowing that I have this 10 acres, I can also call in God's light and peace and grace and ask God to bless and protect my 10 acres so that there is a light barrier that you create around yourself that is a protection from anything that's coming towards you, that you would be protected from that. And there is a peace and a space that you can create every day with your 10 acres, just asking God, please surround, fill, and protect me with this light on my 10 acres so that my boundaries are safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's so important to have healthy boundaries. And what's interesting is, we may lose some people along the way, but we end up gaining so much more in the long run.
Absolutely. We make better friends. We're able to create better relationships when we have good boundaries. We aren't as needy, because people without boundaries become very needy and they take your energy. So having healthy boundaries creates better relationships, and you find that you're a happier, more mature person.
Yeah, all the way around. Well, and so what final thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with, Grace?
Every day I ask myself, if there was a dream I had today, what would it be? How can I make myself happier today? I am in charge of this creativity that I have within me. And I would just ask everyone to play, to learn how to play with their creativity, to dream, to take responsibility for what makes them happy every day, so that we can add to everyone else around us and lift not just ourselves, but the planet. I mean, it's really up to us individually to add to the planet's joy and upliftment. So I'd say dream. What do you dream?
Oh, and what a great note to end on. And where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community to learn more about the work you do in your book?
Well, you can find me on Facebook for Grace-Allison. You can also find me at modernmysticmedia.com. That's my website. And my books can be found there. I'm at grace@modernmysticmedia.com. You can send me an email there. And I'm also at Grace the Mystic on Twitter. So please, I'd love to have everybody connect with me, and I can share stories. I can help you with the book. And I'm also available for workshops, either individually or in a group.
Perfect. Grace, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you, Marianne. I really appreciate you letting me be here today.
Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.